Most men believe attraction is about saying the right thing at the right time. They think confidence comes from clever lines, perfect timing, or knowing exactly what to text back. So they talk more. They explain more. They try to manage every reaction. And without realizing it, they talk themselves out of attraction. But here's the uncomfortable truth most men never hear. Women respond far more to what you don't do than what you do. They notice when you don't rush to impress. They notice when you don't react emotionally. They notice when you don't chase certainty or approval. Attraction isn't created through effort alone. It's shaped by restraint, control, and emotional steadiness. When you remove unnecessary behavior, over-texting, over-explaining, over-validating, you create space. And in that space, perception changes. Calm replaces neediness. Presence replaces performance. If you understand these 7 psychological buttons, your interactions stop feeling forced. You no longer feel like you're auditioning for attention. You stop trying to steer every outcome. Instead, you become grounded in how you move, how you speak, and how you respond under pressure. This isn't about manipulation or playing games. It's about discipline. It's about self-command. When a man is comfortable with silence, with uncertainty, and with not being chosen, his energy shifts. He becomes harder to shake, harder to read, harder to ignore. And that change doesn't happen because you learned better words. It happens because you learned when not to use them. In real life, even if no one ever explained it to you, 2 men can be in almost the same situation with the same woman, yet get completely different results. One man feels the shift the moment it happens. The replies slow down. The energy changes. So he tries to fix it. He texts faster. He sends longer messages. He explains his intentions. He reassures. He adjusts himself to what he thinks she wants. From his point of view, he's being honest and putting in effort. But from the outside, something else is happening. His behavior starts communicating uncertainty, need, emotional pressure, and attraction quietly fades. The other man notices the same shift, but he doesn't panic. He doesn't rush to close the gap or control the outcome. He stays steady in how he speaks, how often he reaches out, and how he carries himself. He doesn't withdraw to punish, and he doesn't chase to secure attention. He remains grounded in his own emotional state, and that calm becomes noticeable. Conversations feel lighter. Tension drops. Women feel less pushed and more curious. They lean in not because he tried harder, but because he didn't. This difference has nothing to do with looks, money, status, or luck. Plenty of men with all of those still struggle. The real gap is psychological positioning, how a man relates to himself in moments of uncertainty. One man tries to control the situation externally. The other controls himself internally. Stoicism identified this pattern long before dating apps, text messages, or modern labels for attraction existed. The Stoics taught that a man's power begins where his emotional reactions end. What you can't control shouldn't control you. When you move from that place, your behavior naturally changes. You become less reactive, less predictable, and more composed. Modern psychology now confirms what Stoicism already knew. Emotional regulation, boundaries, and non-neediness dramatically affect how others perceive you. Not because you're acting aloof, but because calm self-control signals strength. And people instinctively respond to it. Let's slow this down and break it apart properly. These aren't tricks. They're not tactics you turn on and off. They're internal positions. And women respond to them because they feel them, not because you announce them. Button 1. Emotional self-control. The Stoic does not react impulsively. That doesn't mean he suppresses emotion or pretends not to feel. It means emotion doesn't dictate his behavior. When something doesn't go his way, he doesn't spiral. He doesn't send reactive messages. He doesn't try to fix discomfort immediately. That restraint communicates stability. And stability feels safe. From a psychological standpoint, this is emotional regulation. People instinctively trust those who can manage their internal state. When you don't chase validation, don't argue to be understood, and don't react to every shift in tone, your presence feels grounded. Women interpret that groundedness as confidence because it signals you're not easily shaken. Marcus Aurelius wasn't talking about dating when he said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." But the principle applies perfectly here. When your mood doesn't depend on her reactions, your value rises naturally. Button 2. Outcome independence. Needing a specific outcome creates pressure. Pressure kills attraction. When a man needs her interest, her approval, or her response, his behavior changes. He becomes cautious, overly accommodating, or tense. Even when he tries to hide it, that need leaks through. Outcome independence means you want her, but you don't require her to feel okay about yourself. Whether she stays, leaves, replies, or disappears, you remain steady. This signals abundance, not because you have endless options, but because your self-worth isn't on the line. Detachment is often misunderstood. It's not emotional distance or coldness. It's self-respect. You don't abandon yourself to keep someone else comfortable. Micro-engagement worth sitting with. Do you want her, or do you need her? The answer shows up in how you behave. Button 3. Mystery through silence. Most men talk too much when they feel uncertain. They explain. They clarify. They overshare. They try to remove ambiguity, because ambiguity makes them uncomfortable. The Stoic man understands that silence is not emptiness. It's space. Speaking less, but with intention, forces the other person to engage mentally. Silence creates room for curiosity, interpretation, and reflection. Psychology shows that the mind fills gaps automatically. When you don't rush to fill every pause, attention shifts toward you. Epictetus warned against talking too much because excessive speech often reveals insecurity. Silence, when grounded, communicates composure. Button 4. Firm boundaries. Boundaries aren't rules you announce. They're lines you don't cross. When you tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional games, you teach others how to treat you. When you calmly remove yourself from what doesn't align, you communicate standards without drama. Women may test boundaries, not maliciously but instinctively. When a man holds his line without anger, guilt, or explanation, respect increases. Even if there's momentary resistance, the long-term effect is clarity. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about controlling access to you. Button 5. Calm leadership energy. Leadership here doesn't mean dominance or force. It means direction without tension. Choosing a place. Making a decision. Staying composed when plans change. Not outsourcing every choice or seeking constant confirmation. This type of leadership lowers anxiety in social dynamics. People follow those who don't panic. When you stay calm under pressure, it signals competence. That competence becomes attractive because it implies you can handle more than just the moment in front of you. Button 6. Validation discipline. Compliments lose power when they're constant. When validation is freely given without discernment, it stops meaning anything. The Stoic doesn't withhold praise as a tactic. He gives it intentionally. He responds to character, effort, and consistency, not just appearance or emotion. Selective validation carries weight because it's not automatic. It signals that approval is earned through behavior, not begged for, or handed out reflexively. Button 7. Self-purpose first. This is the foundation everything else rests on. A man whose life revolves around his growth, discipline, and direction carries a different energy. Not because he ignores women, but because his identity doesn't collapse around them. Purpose gives structure. Structure creates confidence. Confidence attracts. When your mission comes first, relationships become an addition, not a solution. And that shift is felt immediately, even if it's never spoken. That's why purpose is magnetic. It stabilizes everything else. Here's how to apply this starting today, in real situations, not in theory. Step 1. Pause before reacting, always. That pause is where control lives. Before you reply to a message, before you explain yourself, before you defend your intentions, pause. Most damage happens in the first emotional reaction. When you slow that moment down, you stop acting from anxiety and start acting from choice. You don't need to disappear or play games. You just need space between stimulus and response. Step 2. Stop explaining yourself unnecessarily. Explanation often comes from the need to be understood or approved of. Ask yourself whether the explanation actually adds value or whether it's just trying to smooth over discomfort. When you constantly justify your actions, you communicate uncertainty. Clear actions don't need long explanations. Let your behavior speak first. Step 3. Say no without guilt. Saying no is one of the fastest ways to test your emotional discipline. You don't need to apologize for having limits. You don't need a long reason. A calm, simple no shows self-respect. Guilt-driven yes create resentment, and resentment always leaks out later. When you respect your own time and energy, others adjust to that standard. Step 4. Speak less, observe more. Pay attention to patterns instead of words. Watch how people behave when they're comfortable, when they're uncertain, when they're testing limits. You learn far more by observing than by trying to control the conversation. Speaking less doesn't make you passive. It makes you aware. Awareness sharpens judgment. Step 5. Build a life you don't want to escape from. This is the long game. When your life has structure, purpose, and direction, you stop using relationships to fill gaps. You're not looking for distraction, validation, or emotional rescue. You're inviting someone into a life that already feels solid. That stability changes how you show up everywhere, not just in dating. When you start applying these steps consistently, something internal shifts. You stop scanning for approval in every interaction. You stop adjusting yourself to keep interest. You become more comfortable with silence, uncertainty, and outcomes you can't control. Your presence slows down. It becomes grounded. People feel that difference immediately. Women respond not because you're trying to impress them, but because you're no longer chasing their reaction. Here's a simple check-in for yourself. If one of these steps made you uncomfortable, that's likely the one you need to work on first. Growth usually shows up where resistance lives. If you want calm confidence, emotional control, and respect in every interaction, subscribe to Daily Stoic Mindset. This channel is about building internal strength that carries into real life. Comment Stoic if this changed how you see attraction. And remember, control over yourself is the highest form of power.